Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to the Aspen Institute Abu Dhabi Ideas Festival. Especially welcome to NYU Abu Dhabi. I'm the provost here at NYU Abu Dhabi, and I'm also here because I have been a founding director of a Center of Genomics and Systems Biology in New York before coming to Abu Dhabi about 7 years ago. And of course, being on our campus, especially for the visitors, I hope you had a chance to visit a little bit the campus yesterday. And we have several people, I hope, here from our community. And certainly, you know my face, you know Al's face. If you have any questions about NYU Abu Dhabi, please ask us at any point in time. And one more pitch, which is to say that yesterday, of course, I was really fascinated by the conflicts that people were highlighting, which in one encapsulation of the whole sessions of yesterday, I would see as essentially also a conflict of generation, which didn't really come up a lot yesterday, but a conflict in which society is moving extremely rapidly, and that rapid movement and the innovation happening at the younger areas of development, and so the innovation there is not matched by government, with one exception. We heard, of course, that the UAE government having the Ministry of both Tolerance and a Ministry of Youth Affairs, of State of Youth Affairs, is in fact an example how governments can really develop innovative thinking around these issues. But what I didn't hear enough, it may have happened, is that the Minister of Youth Affairs, of State of Youth Affairs, is one of our first graduates from NYU Abu Dhabi, and one of the first and one of the first 8 Rhodes Scholars that we've had over the last 4 years, which has been unprecedented in higher education. So just like the government here, I think we've gotten together with them to really change how we think about higher education. And hopefully, my one sentence wish is that there'll be a lot of institutions around the world that copy us. And that would be my wish. So, but today, we're going to actually connect that with new ideas of how to age and healthy aging and extending life. And it's a very old field, clearly. We all hope to get that disease, and we all hope that we get that disease for as long as possible. But we also hope that we maybe look at that in a different way going forward. And I think there's a whole change going on. So I have about 2.5 minutes left to give you an introduction of medicine, essentially, for the next few decades. But what I really want to focus on is a megatrend, a single megatrend. That's all the time that I think I can tell you about, which I think has come from these innovations. And it's a trend that essentially marries 2 very good disciplines that have been going on separately. One is under more the umbrella of public health, which really focuses on the health of populations, the health of a whole cohort. And in fact, you heard at the beginning that we launched actually a cohort study out of NYU Abu Dhabi with a number of wonderful partners, the first of its kind. These cohort studies give us risk assessments. They give us incredibly important information that can tell us that if we do certain things, it'll have potential bad impact on our health. But at a medical level, you have to deal with individuals. And you don't know which person is going to get that impact of what's coming out of the health studies that come from cohort studies. And so the bridging between these two is what I see is the real goal of personalized medicine or individualized medicine, which can take this information and actually turn it into, let's say that we know that in this population there's 25% sensitivity to salt. That is huge in public health areas, but we don't know which 25% of the people should not be eating salt, and which of the other 75% are actually quite resistant to eating more or less salt to their physiology. But with this personalized medicine, the hope is that we will know what are the factors in a very precise way and tell actually you are one of the sensitive ones and you're not. So that will really bridge two disciplines over time. Why is this happening? Because, of course, the genome revolution, which in some sense started quite a number of years ago, but had a culminating moment when the human genome the draft was announced in 2000 by Tony Blair and Bill Clinton, And among the people in the audience was, of course, Craig Venter, who's a founder of Human Longevity, which is represented in one of our talks today, and it's great to hear the latest on this. And that genomic revolution has fueled a lot of other revolutions that enable us to measure your genetics at the individual level relatively cheaply. But all these other technologies that have also come up, you know, when you go to the clinic and get a blood test, you might get 30 to 40 readings if you're lucky, I suppose. It depends on what the doctor wants to see. But you can have now more than 40, 50,000 readings in one go. In fact, the imaging technology is also really astonishingly going forward, and so is our understanding of microbes that live within us. All of this fueled by technologies that include mass spectroscopy and all kinds of other things that have had to happen. All of these data then become much better than what you do on a daily basis, where you look at your health by looking at how much you weigh, and every once in a while you'll take your blood pressure, and every once in a while somebody maybe listens to your heart. I think that time, I think, is past, and I think what we can do with things that we have in our pockets going forward is, in fact, measure wellness in a quantitative way. So the quantitative measurement of wellness in the context of your genetics and in the context of your own individualized physiology is the hope for the future, that then treatments will go more and more at an individualized level. Many of the things that are already happening at an individualized level, in particular cancer treatments, are getting more and more individualized using genetic information, and I think this will only increase. The other aspect of the trend that I think I just want to touch upon is that, of course, this changes medicine. Changes medicine in a profound way. It changes it from a context where the majority of work, although not all work, as we know, primary care, is not about this, but generally it's about fixing problems. You go in with an infection and you get somebody to tell you that after a little swab that you have a bacterial infection, you should take an antibiotic, or maybe you shouldn't, depending on the antibiotic of the bacteria. But now, that could actually happen a lot in your pocket. You could carry a lot of that information of wellness and where you are in the spectrum of wellness and not well, and make decisions that could make you back into wellness or in some sense knowingly that you're not doing something you should be doing, inching towards disease. And that changes exactly how we deal with everything, I believe. And we'll hear at the end from the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic, who's actually one of the clinics that I think, in one of the hospital systems, that is one of the most innovative ones in the U.S. And so the final challenge I'm going to sort of say that is coming up is the fact that social media, in the context of what we heard yesterday, had a huge impact on the political spectrum, on the economic spectrum. It's going to have a huge impact here. And of course, when you talk about aging as a potential thing that you can cure, then all of a sudden social media is going to potentially amplify both the signal and the noise, just like it is in every other aspect of social media. And so there's a lot of pseudoscience in this area. There's a lot of people trying to sell all kinds of ideas that will make you live longer and more healthier. A lot of it doesn't have any scientific basis. But yet people will want to flock to it if they really think that this is going to make them healthier. So this is a danger that I see among others. But one advantage of social media, and again, something that needs to be adapted in medicine, is that you might have a rare condition, but on the web you'll find another 1,000 people relatively quickly that form the group, and now all of a sudden you're exchanging information, some of it positive, some of it negative, and you might be much more well-known about your own condition than when you go to see a doctor for the first time or the second time or so on. So the participatory component of medicine is also really changing. So all of these shifts are coming because adult medicine, if aging is about adult medicine, is really changing. And we'll hear a lot about these today, but it's also fueling a new industry, and a new industry that is extremely innovative. So yesterday we heard about these conflicts, but if you think about the pyramid of population structure, as we go more and more older people, obviously there's a huge, huge market, and a lot of industries developing services and it's developing ideas to cater to that market. And so one of the things I'm going to end with is a little bit about the science, because the first speaker, I think, is a very well-known speaker who has had a lot of influential thinking around how far can we take this? And I think he's got one major point from the background that we both know, because he was at Cambridge, where he also interacted with a lot of geneticists. But the genetics of disease is particularly interesting, although, of aging. Interesting slip. But aging, we think of it either as just a natural progression of a deterioration of systems, biological systems. Perhaps they stop repairing, perhaps they stop regenerating. Notice I say stop because we know that they do in the early part of life. And so one of the big questions is, are we just rusting like a car? Or, alternative hypothesis, is there a genetic program that is in fact part of the aging process? And the holy grail, of course, is that there's some kind of a master regulator of that genetic program. That if you could play with that genetic program, then everything else might actually age a lot more slowly. There are examples of this in nature. I could give you many. One is the salmon. The salmon goes up the stream to spawn, lays eggs, and then essentially ages extremely rapidly and dies. That death is now known to be the effect of hormones that are released by a gland. It's not coming to me now. And that gland, if it's removed from the adrenal gland, if it's removed from the fish will live a lot longer. So that's a program that is actually in the adrenal gland. So if we have such a program, we could really make a lot of dent. And from genetics, somebody asked in the late 80s exactly this question and identified in C. elegans, the animal system that I study, in fact, the first mutation that led to 10 times the number of the time that it could live compared to its siblings, just from one gene being mutated. So that would be equivalent to having 1,000 years for us. So there is some hope or some evidence for the biological solution of this, but it's a lot more complicated than that. But I think it's going to be great to hear about this from all the panel and how society is really adapting to change how we deal with all of this.